Testament story of how basically we have the story of these brothers who have betrayed their brother. And the brother that they have betrayed is the person that they have basically allowed to go into slavery in Egypt. And the brother they betrayed was the favored brother of their father. But through his journey, he is in Egypt and so begins a slave, but somehow is able, through who he is and the gifts he has and the vision he has, to become truly the most powerful person in Egypt. Even in some ways, as he says to his brothers, even in some ways, more powerful than the Pharaoh, because even the Pharaoh turns and sees him as a father figure. And so here he is with all this power, and his brothers come before him again. And he has the opportunity as that very powerful person to have his revenge on his brothers. But he doesn't do that, does he? He has a moment with them where they both recognize what could happen next and how much trouble the brothers are really in when he identifies himself and says, I am your brother that you put into slavery. And then the very next thing he says is, but don't worry about it. Because God has made something good out of what you did. By putting me in this position with the gifts I have, I've been able to save Egypt because it's in a period of drought and famine. And I was able to see that. God let me see that. And so we've been able to survive. And I will even extend that to you. You will survive. Come and live here so that you will survive the famine and not be poor. So not only is there this sense of forgiveness out of God's grace and abundance and the way that He's worked in His life, but there is even a saving act. I could even let you be part of the peasants that died from the famine, but I won't. Come and survive. And the whole parallel for that in the early Christian church was one of the first understandings they had of what was going on with the person that they knew as Jesus. Well beloved of his Father, betrayed by brothers, sent to a certain death, and yet those actions make him the most powerful person of God. And by that empowerment, the power is there for him to save the world. In those stories, we have these teachings of Jesus that Luke takes from a common source available to Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We call that source Q. We don't. There's a nice letter, Q, where all the sayings of Jesus and teachings are all written down. And they would have had access to that. So we have this list of things that Jesus has taught. Love your enemies. Help the poor. Lend money. Don't expect it back. When we put all that list in the context of what's going on, in the time that Jesus and his apostles are alive, in the time that Luke is writing, the dominant culture that's there, that's informed by both the patriarchal culture of the Hebrew community and the patriarchal culture of the Roman community, which is basically one which is based on hierarchy in society. And we know who's at the very top and most powerful, and who's at the very bottom are the least powerful. We know who those people are by economic class and by gender, by health and disease, by age. And the people at the bottom are the ones who basically have to cope in their version of trickle-down economics. And it didn't work then, and it doesn't work now. And those power structures that were dominant culture then continue to be ones that we struggle with now. The reason that we even have our Christian tradition the way we have it is because it was handed down through us through a set of hands in that very domination system. It's how I had survived because the dominant culture saw it as something that they could use as a tool And so even though it has been wielded, Christianity has been wielded in ways that have hurt humankind and oppressed people in so many ways, that is a part of our heritage that we need to embrace and understand. We need to accept and recognize truly and really that the teachings that we have of Christ have always been manipulated by the system that helped it survive. But even why it is here now from Constantine, who saw it as a way to basically unify what became known as the Holy Roman Empire, a way to get people to fight for him and to conquer lands that he wanted, a way to be able, through a shining standard with the cross of Christ on it, to unify people to his own purposes. And in the tradition, as it grew as a patriarchal tradition, in which men became the leaders, in which men became bishops, and new kinds of hierarchy was created for the church itself, of cardinals and of a pope. And the wars that happened between the traditions because of that struggle for power. And then we get to the Crusades. And using that same standard of Christ, legitimating wars that lasted generations and the persecution of other peoples. And the residual that we have from all of that in history continue to legitimate the oppression of women and minority Christian communities, including the Cathars and the Albigensians. Those two traditions in Europe were Christian traditions that were very similar to what we might think of as Anabaptists today and Quakers. There was no hierarchy in those communities of Cathars and Albigensians. Men and women were considered equal. Those were threatening to an understanding of social spectrum or hierarchy. And then we have theologians, famously known to us, like Thomas Aquinas, who basically used the dominant culture system to evaluate and legitimate the continued dominant structure within the church. And even imagine that dominant structure was true about the nature of heaven. And that heaven had a hierarchy, God and archangels, and all kinds of angels that we don't talk about anymore, like cherubim and seraphim, and they each had a place in that hierarchy. All legitimated because of a very specific lens that was applied by men to how the world must be organized. We have the residuals in it today that we continue to struggle with as an Anglican tradition, using that history to legitimate the continued oppression of indigenous peoples through what's called the doctrine of discovery, and how the Christian tradition was used by the popes to legitimate taking over the lands that they wanted for those mineral-rich resources. We have it in the continued oppression today of women in certain cultures, and also within the church, that recognition through the Me Too movement that the church has work to do, and forgiveness to ask for, and equality yet to be gained. We have it still in the residual reaction that when Maine elected only the second openly gay bishop in the church after Gene Robinson was elected in 2003. It took 16 years, but we've done it again. And here we have a conversation among the global Anglican Communion about whether Thomas Brown, who is the newly elected Bishop of Maine, about whether he should be allowed to invite his spouse to the gathering of bishops at Lambeth Palace in England next year when the bishops and primates gather again. We still have work to do in a domination system that continues to influence our church. What Jesus has listed there, what Luke has brought forward in Jesus' teaching, is not a laundry list of how crappy we are. It's not. It can feel like that because we can feel that we're falling short, and certainly I have just listed ways in which I feel that we have work to do. But it's not a laundry list of how crappy we are. It is rather a map It's a way how we can work our way out of that labyrinth of darkness as a culture, as nations, as a world, as a church. If we love one another. And how hard that is to do, how essential that is to do, and how much more it needs to be than lip service. How much more it needs to be than lip service. How it needs to be working in our heart and in our community to recognize the people who are marginalized, to recognize the people who are struggling, to recognize our youth who are asking questions of identity at critical times in their lives, and companioning them, saying the words that Christ has given us to say, "You are beloved children of God." We are asked not to judge. We are asked to give fully of our hearts and our resources. We are asked to simply be loving, to expect nothing in return, because the domination system does expect things in return. It expects partnerships that aid and abet one another's corruption. It expects the privileged to help the privileged to stay privileged. And what Christ says to us is the very key of how to deconstruct all of that. Last week, in the readings, we had the Sermon on the Plain. The sermon when the people of all that imagined hierarchy are brought to the same playing field, on the same level, to see one another equally. Those who are struggling with mental health, those who are struggling with poverty, those who are very rich, those who are healthy, those who are dying, those who are newly born, men, women, all brought to the same level. Because what they have in common in their love of Christ and God's and Christ's love for them is a promise to be in community with one another, is a promise to be the kingdom of God. There is no hierarchy in the kingdom of God. There is only one body of Christ, and all the parts are needed, and all of it is blessed. When we are asked to forgive, that is countercultural to the domination system that wants to hold a grudge, that wants that boundary, that wants and needs enemies to legitimate war. When we make the promise of the sermon in the plain, we are deconstructing and setting off track the train to yet the continued understanding that is self-serving. To love is to set aside simply worrying about self, and to set aside playing into a system of hierarchy. It is to set aside gender politics. It is to set aside sexism and racism and all the other isms that keep us from one another. The challenge of mutual understanding necessitates a willingness to have dialogue, to sit down for greater understanding, to say, "I think differently from you, and now let's talk. I believe differently, but I promise to be in a relationship. I live my life differently. I love other people. Now let's sit down and love one another." In the kingdom of God, it is always both and. And the practice of love, including love of self, is the very power that will help us be all that Jesus invites us to be. That laundry list is not a laundry list of shame, but a punch list for how to ensure the kingdom of God, for building in ourselves that kingdom, and so that we can be conduits of God's love. Intolerance must be set aside. It is vital for the survival of our world and all the creatures in it, that we love one another and love God's creation. So as we travel toward the end of this Epiphany season, next week is the last Sunday of Epiphany. As we reach that end and look toward Lent, we are again reminded of the gifts that, even as gifts were symbolically given to Christ as a child, are given to us to discover anew as children of God. And that most precious gift of all, that is the key that unlocks all, is so simple that the domination system wants us to think that it's stupid or naive or silly. But it is the greatest power we have. And it really is what our presiding bishop calls love. Just love. Can we just love? What a world that would be. Let's make it so. In Christ's name.